Ellen DeGeneres had interviewed thousands of celebrities over her career, but she never expected that a 6-year-old girl with pigtails and an oversized blazer would conduct one of the most profound interviews to ever happen on her stage. What started as a cute segment about kids taking over the show became a masterclass in how innocent curiosity can unlock truths that professional journalists never reach. It was a Friday afternoon at the Ellen Studios, and the energy was particularly joyful as they prepared for their Kids Take Over special episode. Ellen, wearing a bright yellow blazer that perfectly matched her sunny mood, was excited about the day's concept, giving children various jobs around the show to see what would happen. "All right, everybody," Ellen announced to the audience as the show began. "Today is going to be different. Today kids are running the show. We have little producers, tiny camera operators, and even a 6-year-old who's going to be my co-host." The audience erupted in delighted applause as Ellen gestured toward the side of the stage. "Please welcome my new assistant for the day, Miss Emma Rodriguez." A tiny girl with dark pigtails bounced onto the stage, wearing a child-sized version of Ellen's signature blazer. Emma couldn't have been taller than 3.5 feet, and the blazer, despite being made for her, still looked adorably oversized. She carried a miniature microphone and walked with the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where she was. "Hi, Ellen," Emma said into her microphone, her voice bright and clear. "How are you feeling about being my assistant today?" Ellen asked, kneeling down to Emma's level. "Really good. I practiced asking questions to my stuffed animals all week," Emma replied seriously, causing the audience to giggle. Ellen was genuinely charmed by the child's earnestness. "What kind of questions did you ask them?" "I asked Mr. Bear why he always looks sleepy even after nap time, and I asked Princess Unicorn if she gets lonely being the only unicorn in my room." "Those are excellent questions, Emma. Are you ready to interview a real person?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Yes. Who am I talking to?" "Well, today we have a very special guest named David Chen, and he's a musician who just released his first album." Emma's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "I love music. Can I ask him about his songs?" "You can ask him about anything you want, sweetheart." A few minutes later, David Chen walked onto the stage to warm applause. He was a man in his early 30s with kind eyes, but Ellen noticed immediately that something was weighing on him. During their pre-interview conversation, he had seemed different from his usual energetic self, more subdued, more guarded. Ellen introduced David to the audience and then turned to Emma. "Okay, Emma, he's all yours." Emma walked over to David with her tiny microphone held high. "Hi, Mr. David, I'm Emma, and I'm 6 years old. How old are you?" "I'm 32, Emma. It's very nice to meet you." "That's really old," Emma said matter-of-factly, getting a laugh from the audience and a smile from David. Emma studied David's face with the intense focus that only children possess. "Mr. David, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Emma. Anything." "Why do you look sad?" The question hit the studio like a gentle thunderbolt. The audience fell silent, and Ellen's eyebrows raised in surprise. David's carefully maintained public persona faltered for just a moment. "What do you mean, Emma?" David asked, clearly caught off guard. Emma tilted her head, still studying his face. "Your mouth is smiling, but your eyes look like when my mommy cries but tries to hide it. Are you sad about something?" Ellen watched this exchange with growing amazement. In 6 years of life, Emma had developed an emotional intelligence that could see through the masks adults wore so skillfully. David looked around the studio, then back at Emma. Something about her innocent concern seemed to crack open something he had been holding tightly closed. "You know what, Emma? You're very observant. I am a little sad." "Why?" Emma asked simply, as only a child could. David glanced at Ellen, who nodded encouragingly. "Well, Emma, sometimes when grown-ups achieve something they've always wanted, they expect to feel really happy. But sometimes they feel scared instead." "Scared of what?" "Scared that maybe they don't deserve it. Scared that people will discover they're not as good as everyone thinks they are." Emma considered this seriously. "But Mr. David, If you made music and people like it, then you are good at music. That's like logic. David couldn't help but smile genuinely for the first time. You're absolutely right, Emma. That is logic. Can I ask you another question? Please do. Emma lowered her voice as if sharing a secret. Do you have friends who tell you nice things about your music? I do. And do you have family who loves you even when you're scared? David's eyes began to glisten. Yes, I do. Then why are you listening to the scared voice instead of the love voices? The studio was completely silent. Ellen felt tears forming in her own eyes as she watched this tiny girl, with no training in therapy or counseling, cut straight to the heart of what David was struggling with. David knelt down to Emma's level, bringing himself to her height. Emma, that might be the smartest question anyone has ever asked me. My grandma says the scared voice is a liar, but the love voices tell the truth. Your grandma sounds very wise. Emma nodded solemnly. She is. She makes really good cookies too. Do you like cookies? David laughed, and for the first time since he'd walked onto the stage, his laugh sounded completely genuine. I love cookies. Good, because I think when you're sad, you should eat cookies and listen to love voices instead of scared voices. Ellen couldn't contain herself any longer. She walked over to where David and Emma were kneeling together. Emma, did you know that you just did something really amazing? What did I do? You helped Mr. David feel better by asking exactly the right questions. Emma beamed with pride. I just asked what I wanted to know. Ellen turned to David. David, how are you feeling now? David wiped his eyes and smiled. Honestly, I feel like a 6-year-old just gave me the best therapy session of my life. He looked back at Emma. Emma, can I tell you something? When I was your age, I was really shy and scared to talk to people. I wish I had been as brave as you are. You can still be brave now. Emma said enthusiastically. It's never too late to be brave. My teacher says that all the time. Ellen knelt down to join them. Emma, would you like to hear some of Mr. David's music? Yes. Can I dance to it? Of course you can dance to it. David stood up and walked over to the piano that was set up on the stage. Emma, I want to play you a song I wrote when I was feeling scared. But talking to you just now made me realize something. This song isn't about being scared. It's about being brave enough to feel scared and do what you love anyway. David began playing a beautiful, gentle melody while singing lyrics about overcoming self-doubt and learning to trust in your own worth. As he sang, Emma began dancing, not a choreographed performance, but the pure, joyful movement of a child responding to music. Ellen watched in amazement as Emma's uninhibited dancing seemed to free David from whatever remaining walls he had built around his performance. His voice grew stronger, more confident, and by the end of the song, he was singing directly to Emma, who was spinning and clapping with pure delight. When the song ended, the audience gave them a standing ovation, but Emma wasn't finished with her interview. Mr. David, that was beautiful. Do you feel better now? I feel so much better, Emma. Thank you for helping me. You're welcome. Can I ask you one more question? Anything. Will you remember to listen to the love voices when the scared voice comes back? David's eyes filled with tears again. I promise I will remember, Emma. In fact, I think I'm going to write a song about love voices and scared voices, and I'm going to dedicate it to you. Emma clapped her hands together. Really? That's the coolest thing ever. Ellen stood up and addressed the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been interviewing people for decades, and I have never seen anything like what just happened here. Emma, you asked the questions that needed to be asked, and you listened with your heart. She turned to David. And David, you showed incredible courage by being honest about your struggles in front of all these people. Ellen looked back at Emma. Emma, what do you think makes a good interviewer? Emma thought for a moment, her face serious with concentration. I think you have to really care about the person you're talking to, and you have to ask about the important stuff, not just the easy stuff. That's exactly right, Emma. You cared about Mr. David, and you asked about the important stuff, how he was feeling, what was making him sad, how he could feel better. Ellen turned to the camera. You know, we spend so much time as adults learning how to hide our feelings, how to give the right answers, how to present ourselves in the best possible light. But sometimes it takes a 6-year-old to remind us that the most important conversations happen when we're brave enough to ask real questions and honest enough to give real answers. The segment ended with Emma giving David a big hug and whispering something in his ear that made him smile and nod. Later, Ellen would learn that Emma had invited David to come have cookies with her and her grandma, so they could talk more about love voices and scared voices. 3 months later, David released a single called Love Voices, which he dedicated to Emma Rodriguez. The song became his biggest hit, not just because of its beautiful melody, but because of its message about choosing to listen to the people who believe in us rather than the fears that hold us back. Emma appeared on the show again when the song was released, and Ellen played it for her. As the music filled the studio, Emma danced with the same pure joy she had shown during David's initial performance. "Emma," Ellen said, when the song ended, "how does it feel to have a song written about you?" "It feels good, but the best part is that Mr. David sounds happy now when he sings." "How can you tell?" "Because his eyes are smiling too, not just his mouth." Ellen smiled at the wisdom of this tiny girl, who had somehow learned to see straight into people's hearts. "Emma, what do you want to be when you grow up?" Emma thought for a moment. "I want to be someone who helps people listen to their love voices instead of their scared voices." "I think you already are that person, sweetheart." The episode became one of Ellen's most shared and beloved segments, not because of celebrity glamour or elaborate surprises, but because it captured something pure and true about human connection. Emma's natural empathy and fearless curiosity had created a moment of genuine healing that resonated with millions of viewers. But perhaps the most beautiful outcome was that Emma and David became genuine friends. David would visit Emma and her family regularly, and Emma would attend his concerts, always dancing in the front row with her characteristic joy. Ellen often said that Emma had taught her the most important lesson of her career, that the best questions come from genuine care, and the most profound answers come from the courage to be vulnerable. The ripple effects of that afternoon continued to spread far beyond anyone's expectations. Within weeks of the episode airing, the show's social media was flooded with videos from children around the world, asking their own love voice questions to family members, friends, and even strangers. Parents shared stories of how Emma's approach had opened up conversations in their homes that they'd never imagined possible. Teachers began incorporating Emma's simple wisdom into their classroom discussions about emotions and empathy. Dr. Patricia Williams, a renowned child psychologist, reached out to Ellen's team after watching the episode multiple times. "What Emma demonstrated represents a level of emotional intelligence that we typically don't see until much later in development," she explained during a follow-up interview. "Her ability to create psychological safety while maintaining genuine curiosity is something we train therapists to do for years." The impact extended into the mental health community as well. Therapists across the country began sharing clips of Emma's interview with their clients, using her question about love voices versus scared voices as a therapeutic tool. The phrase became shorthand in support groups and counseling sessions for choosing self-compassion over self-criticism. David's record label reported that Love Voices had become their most requested song, but more significantly, David himself had transformed. He began writing more personal, vulnerable music, and his subsequent album Conversations with Emma became a critical and commercial success. The album's liner notes included extensive acknowledgments to Emma and her grandmother, crediting them with teaching him that authenticity was more valuable than perfection. Ellen established a scholarship fund in Emma's name for children pursuing careers in counseling, therapy, or social work. During the announcement, Emma, now 7 years old, appeared via video call from her elementary school. "I think helping people feel better is the most important job there is," she said with the same earnest conviction that had captivated audiences months earlier. 2 years later, Emma returned to the show for a special follow-up segment. Still small for her age but radiating the same natural warmth, she had continued to develop her gift for connecting with others. Ellen asked if she remembered her advice to David about listening to love voices instead of scared voices. "I remember," Emma said thoughtfully, "but I learned something new too. Sometimes the scared voice isn't trying to be mean. Sometimes it's just trying to keep us safe. So now I tell it thank you for caring about me, and then I ask the love voices what they think we should do." Even as a child, Emma had continued to evolve her emotional understanding, demonstrating that her initial wisdom wasn't just a remarkable moment, but part of an ongoing journey of growth and insight. The interview had also changed Ellen's approach to her show. She began incorporating more segments focused on authentic human connection, and her staff noticed that she asked different kinds of questions in her interviews, deeper, more personal questions that often led to more meaningful moments. Emma taught us that our audience doesn't just want to be entertained. Ellen reflected during a staff meeting, they want to feel connected to something real. They want to witness authentic human moments because those moments remind them of their own capacity for connection and healing. Because sometimes it takes a 6-year-old to remind us that the most important interviews aren't about getting information, they're about creating connection. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is ask someone why they look sad, and then really listen to their answer. But perhaps most importantly, Emma had shown everyone that wisdom doesn't require age or experience, it just requires a willingness to care deeply about other people and the courage to ask the questions that truly matter.